But where I started with music is I grew up in a very musical family, as I'm sure a lot of people did. And my parents were members of what was called a light opera company. They did Gilbert and Sullivan plays and musicals. And they rehearsed in our house. We had 3 grand pianos in our house. So there were always people over there drinking martinis and playing Cole Porter and Broadway songs, and I kind of grew up doing that. And I knew I could sing from a young age. And then when I was 11 years old, I'm 61 years old now, but when I was 11, it was back in that era when people had like greasy hair, they liked to go around and hit you like this. And I hated that. I was like a hippie. I didn't know it yet, okay? But I went to this dance when I was 11 years old, and I already loved music because I had an older sister who was a bobby soxer and had Elvis Presley records and Ricky Nelson. We had one of those suitcase record players with a spindle in the middle, and they would drop the records one after another. And also, I was afraid of the dark. This is really why I'm a songwriter, why I'm a hit songwriter, because I was afraid of the dark. And my parents made the mistake of leaving this Zenith radio in my room. So they would, turn the lights off, and I'd be under the covers, and I'd sneak my hand out, and I'd just click that radio on. And you couldn't hear it, it was just buzzing. But then after a while, it would come crystal clear, and I could hear the hits of the day, Roy Orbison, Elvis Presley, the Everly Brothers, and James Brown, and Ray Charles, and all that stuff. And I grew up listening to that, and I fell asleep with it on. So for me, a song is 3 minutes long. It has a verse, a little B section, and a chorus, and a bridge in the middle. And that's really how I learned to write songs. And anyway, I went to this first dance when I was 11 years old. I was scared I was going to get the, what beaten out of me, and it didn't happen. But I saw these guys up on stage, and they were probably 5 or 6 years older than I was, and they were playing music, and nobody was hassling them, and I was twitching all over. I was just like, I just couldn't believe it, what the music did to me. So I went back home, and though we had a lot of pianos in our house, we only had one guitar. It was a nylon string guitar with just the 2 bottom strings. And nobody played guitar in my family. So I started going, do, 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 and this is basically the same way I play today, as you'll hear when I finally play something. So that's how I got started, and then I got in high school, and the Beatles, music went through a really bad period right before the Beatles came out. There was a lot of really schmaltzy, the Motown was good, but the regular top 40 was, really pretty bad, big orchestras on it and horrible songs. And the Beatles and the Stones came out and just changed everything for us. And I combed my hair straight down and, over my ears a 1/4 inch. And that was it. I just never looked back. So that's how I got started with it.
Then what happened at school? Did you become just start playing in a high school band?
Yeah, I had a band. I had a band in high school, and I went to this little tiny school in Sedona, Arizona, of all places. It was 120 students. It was a tiny school. We had no television or radio, so we had records that would come in from the outside world. And so we learned the Beatles and the Stones records, and then Paul Butterfield arrived, and Bob Dylan, and the Byrds, and things like that. We learned those things, and we had our band, and because of the stuff we were hearing, we thought we should write our own songs, because these bands wrote their own songs. So instead of being in a cover band and playing, go out and play 3 sets a night of other people's songs, we just, from the beginning, I just wrote all the songs in the band. And we did some Paul Butterfield songs mixed in there because they were so much fun. But, so I always thought you just wrote your own songs. And so that's where I got started and just kept going with that after I got out of high school. I didn't go to college. My parents were mildly disappointed, to put it mildly. My father went to Harvard and my mother went to Vassar. So to not go to college was sort of something that really wasn't done in our family. But I just said, I arrived back from being in boarding school, and I said, bye. I moved into a band house, and that was it. We had a record deal within a couple of years with Fantasy Records. Our band was called Clover. I mean, we were to the hippie days, so we thought Clover was nice and green and very country. We liked country music, and we were San Francisco country people, so we didn't really have backgrounds in it. So for us, country music was Hank Williams and Bob Wills, and we did that kind of stuff. But we were hippies too, and under the influence. So it became twisted and sideways. We didn't have beginnings or endings to anything, but we became friends with this band called Creedence Clearwater, and they also had kind of a R&B, but they were a little bit country too, and they liked us and got assigned to Fantasy Records, and we made a couple records for Fantasy, which are probably two of the worst records ever made by a band. They're just so funky and terrible. We didn't know what we were doing at all.
Were you ahead of your time or something? Or?
I don't know where we were. I think we were sideways from our time. Well, we always had everybody in the band was really talented. We had a guitar player named John McPhee, and I don't know if any of you guys have seen the Doobies over the last 30 years, but John's the lead guitar player in the Doobies, and he's just an incredible musician, and he was always the rock of it. And our bass player who recently passed away was named John Shambodi, and he played with Lucinda Williams and Carlene Carter, and he got Dwight Yoakam his first record deal. He was an influential musician. And then later on, Huey Lewis, who was Huey Craig in those days, joined the band because we lost our record deal, and we went from being like heroes to zeros. You know, when you lose your record deal, you're like nobody, and nobody will touch you, because if one record company drops you, another record company is not generally going to race in and go, "Oh boy, a reject, let's sign them," you know. So we spent a couple of years without a record deal, and Huey joined the band, and we brought a keyboard player in who later became Huey's keyboard player as well. And we experimented with every sound you could think of. Huey was like the James Brown, you know, R&B blues guy, and we didn't let him sing because he couldn't really sing very well in those days. And the thing about Huey is he always had this charismatic leadership style, which if you've seen Huey, you know how he is when he comes on stage. You know, he doesn't come out and go, "Hi, everybody like me." He comes on stage and goes, "Okay, are you with me? Are you with me? You're with me, right? Okay." And he's like he'll explain it, he'll analyze it, he'll run it down. So he had us doing everything from wearing white Levi's and green t-shirts with berets and goatees, okay, to we went through a leisure suit period, okay? Did everybody remember 1973, what that was like? The nightmare, the platform shoes and the rayon clothes and the men's collars that went out of here and polka dot shirts and stuff. Well, guess what, folks? We did that. We started calling Huey an endearing nickname because we called him the Polish bulldozer, because he's of Polish descent, Polish-Irish, and we said he was a Polish bulldozer, loud, confident, and wrong. And then later on, and we didn't take him seriously because we were the old guys in the band. We were the ones who had a record deal and all that. And so, you know, then later on we got another record deal because our terrible Fantasy records were actually kind of cult favorite hits in England. And I don't know if you guys know who Nick Lowe is. Nick is, you know, Nick was in a band there called the Brinsley Schwartz Band, and they used to do our songs. They actually recorded our songs. And they brought us to England, and we fell in with that whole crowd with Elvis Costello and all that kind of stuff. And made a couple albums for Mercury produced by Mutt Langham, and from whom we learned a tremendous amount about making hit records and hit songs, even though we didn't quite have any. But the band was, we were very close. In fact, if you were to hear Clover's last album, it sounds suspiciously like Huey Lewis and the News Sports record. Right. It's just I'm singing instead of Huey. So, I mean, Huey, and the thing about the Polish bulldozer, Huey, is that after our band broke up, he went and found a band of guys who were all 5 years younger than he was. And they went, "Okay." And we'd just been to England, so cut your hair, go to Goodwill and get some, you know, suit jackets and little skinny ties, and you're totally different from everybody else. And he worked that to perfection and made great records too, by the way. Huey turned out to be a fantastic singer, so and producer and songwriter.
So you had those times when maybe nothing was going on during then, and what did you do to keep going, to say, man, I'm not going to give up on this music thing?
Well, we never thought of giving up, but man, we played a place called the Scoreboard for a while. Okay, now what do you think the Scoreboard is? It was like they had the front end of a car coming through the wall, and it was the rayon things, the maroon leisure suits the guys wore, and guys with these mustaches, the kind of long hair, you couldn't trust them at all, It's terrible. So we've been down to the bottom. I've seen, if you wanted to make me a blues player, we were there. I'm making no money and nothing, but we kept going and kept working on our music, and eventually developed into the band that got taken to England, and we became really accomplished. And we, in England, we made the 2 albums, and opened. We did a wonderful tour with a band called Thin Lizzy. Remember, the boys are back in town. And they really took us under their wings, and we had a blast with them. And so we did, a big UK tour, and we did Leonard Skinner tour, and Graham Parker and the Rumor, and we made the Elvis Costello album, which was kind of a mistake album. Now Huey and I didn't play on that record. They wanted to make some demos of Elvis Costello's songs. He was actually called Dec Costello right then. His real name is Declan McManus, and so he was becoming somebody. He was just this mild-mannered guy with glasses, and he had I didn't suspect what he was until they brought home the first tapes from that first session, and it was Red Shoes and Allison and Less Than Zero, and I listened to these songs and I just said, I quit. I mean, they were so good. And they did these 3 sessions in a studio that was about the size of this stage. Honestly, the whole studio is about the size of the stage. An 8-track studio, and that's what that record is. It's 3 little demo sessions. So, just goes to show you, if you write a great song, and if you're an artist like Elvis Costello, it can work for you, even if it's made in a funky fashion like that. Because he went, and we all went, oh, Elvis, that's a great record, but they'll just say, he's just another new wave guy. He went, the record came out and went to #1 in the first week in England. So, what else?
What was your writing process like back then?
My writing process has always kind of been the same, and that I'm still kind of playing I play something simple, and I've always been attracted to, I like a lot of different kinds of music. I really do. I love all kinds of music. I've always liked country music from when I first heard it. I didn't hear it until I was about 14 or 15, but I love country music for the tonalities of it and the majorness of it, and the singing. I love the harmonies and all that. But I always liked I was really drawn to that kind of early rock and roll thing, and then later on, to me, that was the Stones and the Kinks and the band, the Zombies and stuff like that. I love the Kinks. In fact, the story, I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but when I wrote 8675309, I was sitting underneath this plum tree in my backyard, and it looked like a Zen woodcut, with a plum tree. I'm on this wooden bench, and the petals are drifting down, and I'm trying to write, "You really got me," Then I just came up with an extra chord, kind of, you know what I mean? And that's it. And that's where 86753, and I don't know where the number came from or anything. It just popped out. Who knows where that, who can say where that stuff comes from, right? You're sitting there and it just emerges, doesn't it? It just
playing a melody and the numbers to start.
I just started singing it, and that's my process. Now, a lot of times I'll just do things and I won't. See, here's a way that, because I'm primarily a rock writer, and in this way, I know you've had Rory Feek did one of these. Did you guys hear Rory? Oh, Rory Burke. Oh, it wasn't Rory Feek. Okay, well, you know who Rory Lee Feek is? He's written a bunch of #1s, and I've written with him. And Rory's a guy, he writes from the first word of the song. It's got to be perfect. the lyric has to be perfect all the way through. And I think that's, it's pretty common around here. In fact, I've been very frustrated sometimes in Nashville when people sit there with their yellow pads and go, shh, shh, because I just play and sing, and that's my method. And I just let it come out, and then I worry about the details later. And also because I'm a rock guy, I like to throw a structure up. So I'll get a riff going, and I'll go, okay, and then I need a little B section, so I'll do a little of that, and then bang, here comes the chorus, and something will pop out, and I'll go, well, I don't know what that is, but I'll just leave it there, and then come back and massage it later until I like it, and nobody else does, but I still like it.
So you sit there, start doing it. You just turn the recorder on and just start playing.
I don't really usually record right at first. I mean, a couple hours. Yeah, I will. I will. In fact, once I get an idea, if I've spent a couple hours on something, I'm generally almost done with it. And then I'll start making a recording, and sometimes that'll get ridiculous. I'll just spend umpteen hours doing this demo of something. And I really love my demos. And generally I take them out into the world, and they're not really all that well received. People always go, why don't you do a real demo? I say, that is a real demo. That is how it's supposed to sound. But, sometimes it works. Like 8675309 is, I wish I'd lost the cassette somewhere along the road, but it was real close the first day. It was really close to being the record.
I think maybe tell the story how the co-writer came into that song and said, what do I do with this?
Well, I had come up with the chords, and I had the whole structure of the song, basically, and I had the name and number. But I was just, verses, I didn't know what it was about. I'm really stupid. I'm going on 8675309. I was like, I had that, and I went and recorded it. I had this. At the time, it was 1981, I had this kind of squirrel-powered 4-track, big reel TAC 4-track. I don't know if you guys ever had those with a sync switch on them, and when you overdub, you flip the switches and it sounds like you're underwater, and you overdub to that, and then you flip them back, and it's like, oh man, it sounds like a record. But so I made this recording, and I really didn't have much of a door. I had this funny studio workspace in an industrial yard, because I really like industrial yards to work in. And I'd just leave the door open, because generally there were just hard hat guys wandering around. Sometimes I'd look around, there'd be a couple guys sitting there eating lunch and watching me. I'm sitting on my doorstep. So I look around, there's a guitar player from Tommy Two-Tone. And Tommy Two-Tone was a band that was just coming out. They'd had a record out. And his name is Jim Keller, and he listens to it, he goes, Al, he's got this really deep voice, it's a girl's number on a bathroom wall. And I went, oh, of course it is. And so we wrote these really funny lyrics, and I got your number on the wall, but I already had the music and everything. And the riff and everything, it was all kind of done, but I didn't know what it was. So that was his contribution, an invaluable contribution. And so we recorded this little cassette of it, and took it home and back to the house and played it and danced around the kitchen and had a couple of glasses of wine. And then I thought, well, tomorrow I'll write a real song. Go back to writing something that might get on a record. And nobody ever figured out what song would be on the record. And I don't know how down and dirty I should get, but you guys are all in the music business, right? When it got on the record, they approached me and said, I didn't know if they recorded it or not. I had no idea. They said, well, we recorded it, but it's really a marginal cut. It's like the 12th song, and we were having 10 songs. But I'll tell you what, if we get 100% of the publishing, we'll probably put it on the record. So I said, okay, I hear that. 0. You get 0 of the publishing. Because I had already been in the music business for a number of years at that point. And so we actually fought. This is so classic. And this happens a lot. I don't mean to inject negativity into any of this, but this is how it goes. When there's a few $1,000s involved, people will turn on each other. And so we got involved in this big fight about, I finally gave them 2.5% of the writer's share, because I had a majority. I wrote most of the songs. So in those days, we didn't just, it was a rock and roll thing. You didn't just split a song 50-50 for 2 guys. you analyze it and you go, well, that line's worth 7%. I mean, it's really gross. That's how it's done. Usually through a battery of attorneys as well, if the band is big. But so we hassled about it, and it did make the record. And then they said, well, it won't be a single. And the record company guy told me from Columbia, said, oh, it won't be a single. But some DJs started playing it because it was still those days when people would play the records, and they started playing it, and the phones lit up, and it became this thing, became that thing, you know, that won't go away, thank goodness.